The longest river in Southeast Asia, the Mekong, threads its course through 6 countries, linking us together in the Greater Mekong sub-region. Throughout the ages, the seasonal flow and dynamics of the natural systems of the Mekong Basin have nourished our peoples, sustaining great civilizations. Today, 2 out of 3 people in the GMS still depend on the abundant natural resources, harvesting the bounty of wetlands, fields, and forests. Extensive areas of tropical rainforest are home to a remarkable diversity of animal and plant species. The forests are also a source of livelihood for many people, particularly ethnic minorities living in upland communities. In recent years, the GMS has seen rapid change. With a population of 320 million people, this is one of the fastest growing regions in the world, spurred by a development strategy promoting regional cooperation, connectivity, and economic integration. The GMS Economic Cooperation Program is a partnership of the 6 nations, with support from the Asian Development Bank. Investments in energy, telecommunications, transport, and tourism are focused along economic corridors linking the countries. As economic development gathers momentum, however, the challenge is how to make it sustainable. Despite the region's natural wealth, about 50 million people still live in poverty, surviving on less than the equivalent of $1 a day. Productivity gains in agriculture, forestry, and fisheries are at risk. Loss of forest cover and biodiversity, unsustainable use of water resources, sanitation and waste management, among other challenges, have emerged as important concerns. To address these issues, GMS leaders endorsed the Core Environment Program at the 2nd GMS Summit in Kunming in 2005. How does the Core Environment Program, or CEP, contribute to GMS economic cooperation?
We are now talking about environment for development. If we do not protect our environment, our very effort for development will be undermined. The two have to go hand in hand. This is the spirit and inspiration that drives the GMS Co-Environment Program.
The objective of the CEP is to ensure that environmental considerations are integrated into development planning and management policies, especially in the GMS economic corridor areas. Responsibility for the Core Environment Program rests with environment ministers of the 6 GMS countries. In 2005, the ministers approved the CEP and the Biodiversity Conservation Corridors Initiative, known as BCI.
我认为这个 CEP 的这个项目实施，确实对我们湄公地区各国意义呢是非常大的，可以帮助我们实现可持续的这样的一个经济的增长，以及可持续的环境保护。
The Working Group on the Environment, or WGE, oversees the Core Environment Program. The WGE consists of officials from national environment ministries, along with ADB. The GMS Environment Operations Center coordinates CEP implementation and acts as secretariat for the WGE. The CEP works with governments to influence policy and the development planning process. And it also works on the ground with local communities, NGOs, and government agencies to protect ecosystems impacted by development in the economic corridors. The Core Environment Program is introducing Strategic Environmental Assessments, or SEA, as a planning tool to mainstream environmental considerations in development planning in the GMS. Development planning inevitably involves trade-offs. The SEA process assesses the potential environmental impact of development strategies and investments and identifies sustainable options. In the first phase, The SEA process is being piloted to fine-tune the hydropower master plan in Vietnam. Hydropower is seen as a key energy source to drive Vietnam's rapid growth. SEA can help ensure that ecosystem services which are critical to the long-term sustainability of hydropower are protected. In another pilot SEA process, spatial land use planning techniques are being introduced in the North-South Transport Corridor, which links China's Yunnan province with Laos, Myanmar, and Thailand. Engineers are building an eco-friendly highway above the rainforest, tunneling through hillsides to minimize environmental damage, loss of trees, and risk of landslides. The raised highway also allows the passage of wildlife underneath. A third initiative is training tourism planners to use the SEA approach to integrate environmental concerns into Cambodia's national tourism planning. The challenge is how to promote tourism investments without harming environmental assets and also benefiting local communities. SEA will strengthen environmentally sound development planning capacity within the GMS Economic Cooperation Program. Building strong institutions and capacity is an important long-term goal of the CEP.
โครงการดังกล่าวจะเป็นอันแบบอย่างอันที่ดีในการสร้างความเข้มแข็งให้สถาบันการจัดตั้งรวมทั้งพนักงานและรวมทั้งการจัดตั้งปฏิบัติบรรดาระเบียบกฎหมายที่ติดพันกับสิ่งแวดล้อมในระยะผ่านมาให้มีความเข้มงวดและก็ถูกจัดตั้งปฏิบัติอย่างสุดกกสุดปลาย
The Biodiversity Conservation Corridors Initiative, or BCI, is the flagship component of the CEP. The BCI aims to prevent or remedy fragmentation of important forest landscapes in and around the economic corridors. New east-west and north-south roads connecting Mekong countries boost trade, investments, and bring other benefits. But the new roads also open up access and bring more pressure on the forests. Encroachments and illegal logging accelerate fragmentation of fragile forest landscapes, causing loss of habitat and biodiversity, and reducing the quality of watersheds and other ecosystem services important to local communities and economic development. Deforestation directly harms the livelihood and food security of people dependent on the forests. In Champasak province in southern Laos, for example, villagers' main source of income comes from collecting non-timber forest products, such as medicinal herbs, seeds, and edible mushrooms, which are becoming harder to find. The BCI is working with government agencies, NGOs, and local communities to create conservation corridors to restore ecological connectivity in important biodiversity landscapes. This is combined with community-based activities to improve management of natural resources and to create alternative forest-friendly livelihood opportunities such as ecotourism to increase incomes of the many poor people living in the corridor areas. BCI activities are underway in 6 pilot sites in 5 countries. A research team is gathering data on the current state of biodiversity and the forest ecosystem in the BCI pilot site in southern Laos. Progress in restoring fragmented landscapes in the pilot sites will be closely monitored and reported. Like the canaries of the coal mine, information from BCI pilot sites would forewarn us about changes in natural ecosystems. In a few years, scientists will return to work with local communities to see what changes have taken place. The monitoring framework is called an Environmental Performance Assessment, or EPA. EPA is a powerful policy and management tool to measure the degree of success in achieving environmental and sustainable development goals. The EPA framework reveals the factors which help or hinder progress toward improved environmental performance and identifies corrective measures. EPA can measure a country's progress towards achieving targets, such as the Millennium Development Goals. All GMS countries are committed to the MDG target for access to safe drinking water, and some have set significantly higher targets. Routine conduct of EPA allows countries to assess whether the MDG targets are likely to be realized and to identify necessary policy and management actions to remain on course. Climate change is now clearly on the environmental agenda in the GMS. As the region develops, protecting the remaining forests will be a critical challenge. Forests are the lungs of the planet and a crucial hedge against climate change. In the GMS, forest loss and degradation is an important contributor to this problem. People in rural areas will be the most vulnerable to the effects of climate change, as extreme weather events and changes in temperature and rainfall take their toll on local farming and ecosystem services. The CEP can help develop strategies to cope with climate changes. For example, in BCI pilot sites, conservation contracts which provide incentives for people to protect the forest and wildlife are being adopted by communities. EPA activities at these sites can become a part of our climate change early warning system by alerting us to changes in our environment. BCI sites could become a storehouse for gene pools, from which new crops for changed climatic conditions can be derived for use by local communities. Biodiversity conservation corridors could also provide an escape valve for wildlife species to adjust to the impact of changing rainfall or temperatures on food supply and shelter. The Core Environment Program empowers GMS countries to improve environmental management, achieve sustainable economic growth, and secure our natural heritage for generations to come.